What happens when the most powerful gangster in America walks into a room and realizes he doesn't control it? The Stork Club, Manhattan, February 1946. When Lucky Luciano entered the VIP room, every mobster seated at the table rose to their feet. Everyone except a single man. Bumpy Johnson remained seated, cigar glowing, eyes fixed on the man who had unified the Italian Mafia. Luciano's bodyguards instinctively reached for their guns, but Luciano lifted a hand and stopped them. He knew something they didn't. The black man sitting across from him controlled something Luciano needed more than muscle. Harlem's numbers racket, and whatever Bumpy Johnson said in the next 60 seconds would either create an alliance that reshaped organized crime forever, ignite a war that would soak New York's streets in blood. It was February 1946. World War II was over, and America was celebrating. But in the smoke, choked back rooms of New York City, a different kind of conflict was taking shape. Lucky Luciano, the architect of the modern mafia, had just been released from Dannemora prison after 9 years behind bars. The government had offered him a deal. Help secure the docks during the war using your influence, and we'll reduce your sentence. Luciano delivered, but there was a price: deportation. In less than 3 weeks, federal agents would send him back to Italy for good. And Luciano, being Luciano, wasn't leaving without locking down his empire. The 5 families were stable. Frank Costello was running the Luciano family in his absence. Vito Genovese was plotting from overseas. Albert Anastasia controlled the docks. Everything was in place, except Harlem. The numbers racket, an illegal lottery pulling in millions every week, was booming. And the Italians wanted a piece they'd tried once before. In 1935, Dutch Schultz forced his way into Harlem's numbers business. But Schultz made one fatal error. He underestimated a quiet, sharply dressed enforcer named Ellsworth. Bumpy Johnson. Schultz ended up riddled with bullets in a New Jersey tavern. Now, 11 years later, Luciano wanted what Schultz couldn't take. But Luciano was smarter. He knew you didn't storm Harlem with guns blazing. You talked first. You showed respect. You made an offer. So Luciano sent word to Bumpy Johnson. Let's meet. Bumpy didn't reply for a week. That silence told Luciano everything. This wasn't going to be easy. The Stork Club on East 53rd Street was Manhattan's most exclusive nightclub. Frank Sinatra performed there. J. Edgar Hoover drank there. And on the night of February 18, 1946, Lucky Luciano reserved the entire VIP room. He arrived with 6 men. Frank Costello, his acting boss. Albert Anastasia, the executioner. Meyer Lansky, the accountant. And 3 bodyguards with more bodies to their names than they could remember. Bumpy Johnson arrived alone. He was 40 years old, wearing a perfectly tailored navy 3-piece suit and a crisp white shirt. No tie. He never wore ties. A gold watch chain hung from his vest. His hair was freshly cut, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. In his right hand, he carried a leather briefcase. The bodyguards stepped forward, hands drifting toward weapons. Luciano raised a finger. Let him through. Bumpy walked past them without a glance. His footsteps echoed across the marble floor. He pulled out a chair at the head of the table, the seat reserved for the boss, and sat down. He placed the briefcase on the table, removed a cigar, and lit it. No one moved. Costello's jaw tightened. Anastasia's hand slid toward his waistband, but Luciano smiled. He understood exactly what Bumpy was doing. This wasn't disrespect. It was a test. Bumpy was setting the terms before a single word was spoken. Luciano sat across from him. "Mr. Johnson, thank you for coming." Bumpy took a long draw from his cigar and exhaled slowly. "Mr. Luciano, you wanted to talk, so talk." Luciano folded his hands. His voice was calm, practiced, the voice of a man who had negotiated with presidents and killers, and knew which was which. "I'm leaving the country in 3 weeks. The government's sending me back to Italy. Before I go, I need New York quiet. No wars, no chaos. Just business." A Bumpy nodded, said nothing. "Harlem is the last piece." Luciano continued. "The numbers racket is making millions. My people want in. But I know you've been running things since Schultz died. You've got the community, the infrastructure, the police." He paused, locking eyes with Bumpy. "I'm not here to take what's yours. I'm offering a partnership. You keep running Harlem. We provide protection, capital, and connections. We take 40%. You stay independent, under our umbrella." The room went silent. Costello leaned forward. Lansky tapped his fingers softly. Anastasia cracked his knuckles. Bumpy took another drag. "And if I say no?" Luciano's smile stayed. His eyes hardened. "Then we have a problem. Because no one survives being against us." It wasn't a threat. It was a fact. Bumpy set his cigar down, opened his briefcase, and removed a photograph. He slid it across the table. Luciano picked it up. His expression didn't change, but his grip tightened. The photo showed a Red Hook warehouse, one of Anastasia's gambling operations. Anastasia was in the picture, shaking hands with a known police captain. "That was taken 3 days ago," Bumpy said quietly. "I've got 12 more." The room froze. Costello's hand moved toward his jacket. Anastasia half rose from his chair. Luciano didn't look away. "Are you threatening me?" Luciano asked. "No," Bumpy replied. "I'm showing you respect. I could have sent those to the DA, or the papers. Burned your whole operation. I didn't." He leaned forward. "You asked for a partnership. But what you offered wasn't partnership. It was a takeover with manners." Luciano placed the photo down. For the first time, he looked impressed. "So what do you want?" Bumpy smiled faintly. "You want what Schultz wanted. Control. You can't have it. Not because you're weak, but because Harlem isn't yours." He gestured toward uptown. "Schultz failed because he thought black people were stupid. Thought force was enough. Harlem runs on trust. Respect. You'll never have that." Then he finished. "You get 10%. Not protection money. A service fee. You handle banking and legal help. No soldiers in Harlem. Ever. You want your money. You send a courier. Harlem stays black. Harlem stays mine." Silence. Lansky spoke first. "Charlie, 10%. Clean money, no risk. It's smart." Anastasia scowled. "What stops him from cutting us out?" A Bumpy answered calmly. "The same thing stopping you from taking Harlem by force. A stalemate." Luciano studied him. Then he laughed. "Schultz was an idiot," he said. "He should have talked to you." Luciano stood and extended his hand. 10%, no soldiers. Monthly delivery. Bumpy stood and shook it. "We have a deal." 3 weeks later. Lucky Luciano left America forever. The deal held for 22 years. When Bumpy went to Alcatraz, Costello took care of his family. When he got out, the partnership still stood. Luciano later said, "Bumpy Johnson was the smartest gangster I ever met, and the most dangerous. Because he didn't ask for respect. He demanded it." Bumpy kept the photograph for the rest of his life. Not as leverage. As a reminder. Power isn't about pulling the trigger first. It's about knowing when not to.